Good Saturday morning to you. I'm Rob Acampora. You are a part of the A Game. We're at the Shared Universe Studios in the Jersey Shore. And by the way, this is vanilla creme brulee from Quick Check. Highly recommended. I was actually surprised it was available. So good morning to you as we get the caffeine going. My guest, by the way, second time. And ironically, I was checking out 1 year and 1 day to the day last time he was here. And when I had Dave Walls in from ABC 13 in Virginia, the sports anchor, director, and pretty much everything in that department without question. We were going to talk about the NCAA tournament, and then, the world kind of went crazy. And now a year later, there's still a little bit of crazy. We're going to get into all of it, but thanks for giving me your time. Thanks for bringing your A game, Dave.
1 year and 1 day ago, well, the world was still going crazy, and every time it goes crazy, I seem to be talking to you. I'm not playing conspiracy theorists here, but
And I remember last year you were at the ACC tournament, weren't you last year?
Yeah, I was. I was on the court when all of a sudden they canceled everything, and they bring the trophy out. And the players of Florida State go, "Oh, did we win this thing? I mean, is this for real?" Like they didn't know, and yeah, it was the most surreal moment I've ever had in sports.
And the crazy thing is, as surreal as that is, there's still some more surreal stuff that we're going to get into, especially with the ACC. I mean, and it's going to have some interesting ramifications to what's going to happen tomorrow on Selection Sunday. But bringing you in, you're an expert as far as Liberty University is concerned. You're an alum. You follow the team, obviously, through your work on Channel 13 and in Virginia with the ABC affiliate. But this past season in football, I mean, for this program, it was sort of like the high of highs and a little bit of controversy behind the scenes with the university. And in the midst of all the chaos, they're literally one missed field goal away from an undefeated season. I mean, it has to register that this program's not going anywhere. They are now officially, legit. You have a coach who's had a checkered past, but may have been coach of the year in some people's minds, Hugh Freeze. But when you look back on that season, did anybody, credit to Turner Gill for really setting up the program to get to that point. But did anybody see them being this good this past season?
I think we thought they'd be good, and we thought that they would have a chance of maybe defeating one of these big teams. Remember, their schedules, in years past, even though they may have had some success, it was usually at the FCS level. Well, here they are, and all their experience against FBS teams, they had lost to Syracuse a few years ago in their home opener. And so this year you looked at the schedule and you thought, well, they got Syracuse, NC State, Virginia Tech. And I think you thought, at least the way the beginning of the season started, you go, okay, Syracuse might be the one. That might be their one chance to get an ACC win.
Right.
And they do that. They do exactly what they need to do on the road. Huge moment for the program. And then you go, well, then how far can this thing go? And certainly here in Virginia, Virginia Tech's only an hour and a half down the road, and this market heavily divided usually between Virginia and Virginia Tech. Now, Liberty fans thought they could win it. Hokie fans were laughing right up through kickoff when all of a sudden, about halftime, this thing became very real for Virginia Tech fans, and not in a good way. And then from then on, it was just how far can this thing go? How far? And even the NC State loss, which I'm sure we could talk about, wasn't as deflating of a loss as you might think, because they should have won that game, and then there was no doubt really the rest of the way. Like, boy, seeing what we accomplished, we can accomplish anything. I mean, if you're a fan or just an observer of the program, as you mentioned, the highest of highs. And with Hugh Freeze having his chances to leave after the season, he's had millions of dollars dangled in front of him, and he goes, you know what? I like Liberty. This is where I'm at, which I'm not going to lie, as a reporter, I was going, okay, coach. Well, let's see what happens when that big check comes in. When I heard how much money they paid Will Muschamp to go away from Columbia and South Carolina, and then all of a sudden Hugh Freeze is on everybody's tongue, I said, okay, this is the one. And Hugh Freeze is still in Lynchburg here, Rob. So, it may just happen. This may be the program of the future for the next couple of years that FBS teams are not going to want to schedule.
Yeah, we proved that this year. The crazy ending to the Virginia Tech game, if you didn't catch this, if I remember correctly, the field goal was missed, then there was a penalty, and then they made good on it 5 yards closer, and they win the game with no time left on the clock. It was a great game up until that point, but that crazy ending kind of in a weird way, it put them on the map, because everybody from ESPN to Fox Sports, they were running that replay like crazy, because it was one of those, this is one of the most bizarre endings we've seen all season. Oh, wait, but there was more to come, as we saw the NC State game, a 15-14 game, but it was I don't know what happened on that field goal, because I mean, it was a tough game and they're getting national coverage, and I'm watching the game and I'm sitting there going, wow. I mean, I thought you look at NC State just outside the top 25, a team that got themselves to a really good bowl game. If they win this game, all of a sudden, it is two things. If they win that game and the Coastal Carolina game happened on schedule, what would the bowl committee have done? I mean, the problem is we know the commitments to some of these conferences would have made it difficult. It would have seemed like, well, maybe they throw them against Brigham Young, which would have been good, but they would have deserved another shot at an ACC team, a fourth, for sure.
I don't disagree with you there. I mean, well, first of all, going back to that Virginia Tech game, I'll add another layer to it. Remember, Virginia Tech, Liberty doesn't only not miss that, they missed that field goal. Yeah. It's blocked. Virginia Tech runs it back as time expires for a game-winning touchdown. The few fans in attendance, the coach is going crazy. And then, oh yeah, Justin Fuente called a timeout. Bring it back. Re-kick it. And this kicker for Liberty, by the way, he had given up football 2 years ago. He was supposed to be kicking at Penn State. And he said, you know what? It's not going to happen for me. And he just goes to Liberty as a student. And then they put out an announcement on the bowl board. Hey, you want to try out for a walk-on kicker? And he goes, well, okay. And then this dude kicks a 55-yard field goal. When, by the way, in the last 2 or 3 games, he couldn't make them under 30. He was.
Wow, I didn't realize that. Wow.
Yeah, if you look at like the FIU game and a couple others, he had missed them like 29 yards or 31 yards, and he's like shanking them. And so when he lines up for a 55-yarder, you're like, no. And then straight as could be, he could have hit it from 65. Then you go to NC State, and it was a very makeable field goal. I will say it was a humid night. There were some other factors there, but give the Wolfpack credit. They got a good jump on the ball. That game shouldn't have come down to a field goal. Hugh Freeze even admitted later he played it too conservative down the stretch there, and it was the one rare game that Malik Willis was felt like he had to do a little bit more, and he kind of put the ball in some bad situations. But if Liberty wins that game and they run the table, my one question is they didn't give Coastal Carolina much respect for what they had done. And keep in mind, they were the undefeated team coming in.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you were wondering, would they give Liberty any respect? And I felt like they had to run the table in order to get maybe that next echelon, because the Cure Bowl was an agreement they had made when they first transitioned to FBS. And you were going, well, at least we got that in our back pocket. Right. But, we've earned enough respect. Well, clearly in year one, they didn't, but what a game that turned out to be, old FCS rivals going at it. And with Coastal Carolina, I can tell you over the years, even at the FCS level, it was always last second, overtime, a blood war. Kids at Liberty still wear shirts that say beat Coastal on the front. And that used to be their blood rival. And I mean that seriously, blood rival. So to have those two match up in a bowl game for a Liberty fan was a dream come true. And especially to the end to send them home with the only L on their record. Right. Yeah, very satisfying end to the season.
And let's face it, Coastal Carolina played probably 2 of the most exciting games of the year. The Brigham Young game, which got great attention, was well worth every minute to watch. Then you watch the game, the Cure Bowl. I mean, that to me took a little bit more than the BYU game. That was probably, in my book, one of the top 3 games of the season. So, I mean, in that sense, at least Liberty on the field leaves this great impression coming into the next season. And a lot of it is going to depend on how the scheduling goes. Can they maintain this momentum? How the recruiting is going to go. Malik Willis, who you mentioned at quarterback, he's going to be a key to this. 34 combined touchdowns this past season. He is, without question, the glue to this offense and where the future could possibly go in the next season.
He absolutely is. And it's funny to think about. There was actually a quarterback battle in camp. Freeze had brought in a transfer quarterback from Maine, a senior, to go, well, you know what? We got this guy, and he's got a big, powerful arm. So coming into week 1, we did not even know that Malik Willis was going to be the starter. It was one of these, let's wait and see. And then he made no mistake right away. Once they get that opening day win against FIU, it's, this is what we're doing. Okay, let's go. So, Western Kentucky was Luke on that home opener was FIU. But Malik Willis certainly has Liberty has not had a ton of quarterbacks in their history who have had all the weapons, the running and the passing, but he's also you don't really see it on TV, much more built and physical that I think
Mm-hmm.
at least at this level of FBS independent that you would normally see. So that's an asset, and then he's got loads of wide receivers, some talented backs as well. The defense has been very underrated as well too. They came up with some big turnovers, especially late in that Cure Bowl, some big interceptions, and of course the special teams. So the only sad part for Liberty fans is that most of them weren't allowed in to see the games.
Yeah, I know that's got to be just disheartening because it's like you wait for this moment and it's like we can't go.
Dang. Yeah. Oh yeah. They did expansions to the stadium. They knew these games were coming, and now I think they're just crossing their fingers because in 2021, Virginia Tech will make their way from Blacksburg to Lynchburg, and so I know Liberty fans and probably Liberty administrators looking for a little bit of the ticket money are like, please, let's get this COVID thing done already. But yeah, and you hinted at it though too. It's been a tumultuous year off the field for the school as well. So it was nice to have a good story to talk about on the field to maybe rinse a little bit of that taste out of their mouth.
Yeah, I was about to say winning can sometimes do that. And obviously the university made some key decisions, taking Falwell Jr. off the board and getting him out of the equation and trying to, let's just say, racially get everything in a better pocket. Do you feel like Liberty is on the right path at this point as far as off the field? Because clearly on the field, football, and we'll talk basketball, they're on the right path without question.
Yeah. Oh, athletic programs wise, there's no doubt the entire school is on the right path. They've got top-notch facilities. Players are competing against the best. They've got a tremendous digital network. A lot of schools now you can see they're kind of catching up to the streaming, whatever. Liberty really has their own television production studio, to do ESPN style, not just the graphics package, but I'm talking programming, studios, and features. I mean, they do it all. So Liberty gets a ton of props for that. Off the field, as far as what you said with Jerry Fall, and last year we even talked about him a little bit. Yeah, my interactions with him on a one-on-one basis, being a reporter, have always been nice and friendly. But he had really pushed his own personal views, which when you're the president, I guess you can do. But at the same time, that means your players and can react to that. Those who are coming there to be a Christian university, not necessarily a conservative university, and even though Falwell's out, there's still signs and struggles, internally that, there's people go, look, I'm here for a Christian education, for a Christian experience,
right?
Not the conservative experience. There's going to be some intermingling, but at the same time, it's not 100%. You can't just go, well, we won and the season's over with. There's still a struggle going on. We saw a couple athletes this past year leave, especially after, not just with we had a football player or two. We had, at the time, their best women's basketball player say, that's it, I'm going out of here. And I think she went to UCF. That was a huge loss for the team there. And so it's not 100%, even with Falwell now out of the equation technically. But, the school suffered a lot of black eyes there. And I don't think that's the kind of thing that just goes away right away. So hopefully Liberty football winning, the basketball winning, hopefully those type of things are steps towards healing across the entire campus, but it will take a little time.
Dave Wells here on the A Game. We were talking a little bit about football before we get into March Madness. You're covering high school football. What has it been like with high school football going on in the spring? It's got to be probably, welcome to COVID. This has been bizarre.
It's weird to be talking about college basketball at 6 o'clock and high school football at 11 o'clock. It's like wearing shorts in the wintertime. Your body doesn't know what to do to make sense of it. I was literally, Thursday, I was in Greensboro in the morning for the ACC tournament for Virginia's buzzer beater. And then it's a 2-hour drive back to Lynchburg. And by 6 o'clock, I'm on a football field covering high school football. And I'm literally going, I've never experienced it. Probably will never will again. Thank goodness. But,
and throw one more thing into the equation. When you're doing your sports report, you're also giving like VMI updates on their football season because the football subdivision's playing in the spring as well.
Yeah. In fact, as soon as we finish up, I'm going up to Lexington to go cover FCS football. And then Division III basketball just had their championships for conferences, and it's all over the place. But, at a certain level, you got to go, this is what we've got to do, especially on the high school level for these kids.
Right.
They can't afford to lose a year. College, you can redshirt or get an exemption. These kids on the high school level, this is it. I'm sorry, Johnny's not going to go ahead and redshirt a year of high school and stay till he's 19.
Right. And I think that raises a very interesting question, because there's a lot of talent that comes out of Virginia football that wind up at Division I schools. How much is this having an effect on their chances in getting into a top flight university or even a Division II program to play for the next season?
It does make an impact. There's no question about it. Football, I think, is the hardest hit one, to be honest with you, because I think if you look at some of the other sports, let's pick softball, for instance, just out of the top of my head, or baseball for that matter. I know, a lot of these kids used to rely on high school sports to get recruited, but now you've got travel teams, and off-season teams. And basketball's the same way now. No, there's AAU and other travel teams. That's where these players a lot of time will get their best film, because the coaches whenever can get a little more access, bring their own cameras, and these kids can get recruited that way. Football, you don't really have that level of alternate play. So if you're going to get recruited, you're going to have to do so through word of mouth from your coaches, through training camp, and through games. And here in Virginia, we're only doing 7 weeks to get 6 games in.
Wow.
So if you lose a game for COVID, well, you're now down to 5. You're now down to 4. And I'll tell you, just down the county, just south of us, in between Lynchburg and Danville, they're doing a county-only schedule. There's 4 high schools. The COVID levels are not at a point yet, even there, where they say, we don't feel comfortable letting our kids travel outside the county. So those 4 schools are just playing each other round robin style. Then they're going to determine a county champion. In April, they're going to do a little tournament, and they go, congratulations, you're the county champ. You're not playing for a state championship. So it's a little bittersweet, but at the same time, they're playing, So, I mean, everybody is just kind of trying to do the best they can to schedule something to get these kids a chance to play.
And you were saying to me before we even came on here, talking about Division III sports, Lynchburg had a surprise run in the Old Dominion Athletic Conference. And without a Division III tournament, these conference tournaments really become their season. It's unfortunate we're not seeing a D3 tournament or an Ivy League tournament at Division I. These were decisions that were made. Hindsight being 2020, you kind of say, I understand why you did it, but I feel bad for the kids, because especially at the Division III level, non-scholarship, they live for that chance to get to the dance and maybe play for a national title.
Yeah, and even if you don't pay attention to D3, you still get a lot of the same storylines. For instance, in the Old Dominion Conference, called the ODAC, Lynchburg made this surprise run to the final. Even though they were very good, they battled COVID issues and they lost games and went through stretches without their best players. But in the finals, they placed Randolph-Macon out of near the Richmond area. Randolph-Macon, the number 1 team in the nation, by the way, ran the table. And it was a single-digit loss for Lynchburg, came down to maybe the last few minutes. And that's one of those things where you go, boy, if the seeding is right in the tournament, we could see them again, because Lynchburg had finally gotten all their pieces healthy. And you go, boy, all we got to do is maybe make it to the Sweet 16, which they've done. And we could get this rematch on a national level. Yeah. And it just won't happen. Instead, you have Lynchburg maybe got 8 games in all year, and Randolph-Macon is your undefeated champ at maybe 10-0. So it's bittersweet, but again, you get the chance to at least get the trophy. So, it is what it is, I guess.
Now we take it to Division I with Dave Walls here on the A game. The March Madness, where do we start? No Duke, no Kentucky. There are going to be people filling out their brackets putting Duke and Kentucky in because it's like automatic, and now it's like, wait, what? They're not here? Hold it.
This is the year made for people who pick based on jersey color.
I
like blue uniforms.
Bracketology by that. I'm telling you, it's true.
It's the one year. For Duke, they were a low enough seed that I think they needed to win this thing, even if
you're about to answer my next question, because they were 13-11. You follow the ACC. Take the fact that they just unfortunately had to forfeit their last game. Their season's over. With the body of work at 13-11, with their biggest one being Virginia, were they going to make the tournament? I had them outside, one of the last 4 out.
I think that's about where I would have them. Although knowing the selection committee, I think based on name alone, they would have found a way to get Duke in. You don't have a 24, 25-year win streak of going to the NCAA tournament for nothing. You don't just go, well, they had a bad year. No, they would have found some at-large team and bumped them out, who's on the bubble. But did they deserve to be in? No, I don't think so. Because when you look at the body of the work of the rest of the ACC, Virginia, I think deserves to be in. Virginia Tech, good enough to get in at some level.
Right.
And then depending what happens tonight, Florida State, I think had another solid year, champs last year, and had a good year as well. And UNC playing hot at the right time. They're a bubble team now where I go, boy, they made a pretty good statement in their 2 wins in the tournament. Now I'm looking at it.
How did that team go from where they were to where they are now? I mean, is it they say because they didn't get the proper let's say practices or the warm-up games like they normally do, that it has affected some teams. Do you feel affected, North Carolina?
That's a great question. Not covering the program in person, I don't know what kind of practice time they got, but what I could tell you is from the teams that I do cover, the practices are so limited in nature. And, keep in mind the beginning of the year, most of the practices were, hey, we have one ball that we can share and it has to be sanitized, and we can do certain groups and certain physical drills, but we can't dribble in one-on-one this thing, so it's hard to say. And plus North Carolina does things differently than Virginia does. So I can't comment to their thing, but there's something that I think to be said of playing well at the right time. And UNC had been so middle of the pack throughout the year. And now you feel like, okay, they're playing their best ball now, put up over 100 points against Notre Dame, and they're big men finally playing like big men. We saw little flashes of it last year, but nobody stayed healthy last year for UNC. It was the walking wounded all year long. And so this year you go, okay, they're getting healthy. They're all together. And now, look, this is what we thought they were capable of. And I think they're a little better than their record showed. So in my eyes, I think they would have made it in.
When you look at the ACC, because you cover Virginia, you watch enough ACC games, looking at all the conferences, ACC probably top 3, but are they the number 1 power conference at this point? My vote's going to the Big 12 this year. Something about that conference where literally top to bottom, anybody can win at any given time. ACC has more teams, but there clearly were some gaps as far as the disappointment in Notre Dame. BC looks lost. You get the gist of where I'm going with that.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, and I'm really excited to see Oklahoma State and Texas play tonight for the title. That should be a really, really exciting one. But yeah, top 3 I think is a very, very fair assessment. Parity is kind of the word of 2021. There's very few teams that, with the exception of a Gonzaga, of course, running the table so far, there's very few teams that have had that dominant look all year long because, as the ACC tournament proved, no bubble is perfect at protecting these players. To give you an idea, we were going, boy, are we allowed to cover this tournament in person? Well, we went from, being able to sit on the court with our camera, on the sidelines and then get to interview the players afterwards, to this year, they said, okay, you could be on the upper level of the Greensboro Coliseum, so you could shoot it from the rafters. And, oh, no, you can't go down on the floor. As soon as the game's over, you have to leave, and then you can do your post-game press conference from a laptop in your car. That's as close as we were allowed to get. Wow. And that still wasn't enough to protect Virginia. It wasn't enough to protect Duke, assuming, of course, this is where they got the virus.
Right.
But still, no bubble is perfect, and that makes me wonder now. I hope I'm not jumping ahead here, but it makes me wonder. So we're gonna pick a tournament. We're gonna go to Indianapolis, and all these teams are going to be there. What happens when the first team gets knocked out with COVID-19? Especially a first round. Especially a first round game. There's going to be a team on the bubble who missed going, we can jump in and go. Does the NCAA do that, or do they just give a bye? And these are the questions that I don't think anybody has answered yet, and we probably won't get an answer until Selection Sunday or until the first team gets knocked out by COVID. And it blows my mind.
And right now, Virginia is pretty much saying they'll go to the tournament because right now they've earned a spot in the tournament no matter what. But the rules that I've heard so far, and you can elaborate a little more on this, so long as you can suit 5 players, they will allow you to play a game in the NCAA tournament. But if you're down to 5 players, the chances of you winning, 1 player fouls out, you're in trouble. You're in deep trouble. I mean, we've turned into the movie Hoosiers. These are my guys. They're going to play 4 at the end. Oh, God. But
I mean, before you know it, they're going to be playing the game with the masks on and with gloves on. I mean, that's what it's going to come down to.
Well, again, I give all these kids a lot of credit. This is not an easy situation for them. They're representing the school. These are not professional athletes. They're going out there and playing for the pride and knowing that there was always a risk coming on. And it's, for the most part, this season has been so up and down. Some teams have played 30 games. Some teams have played as little as 14. So it has been this sort of hodgepodge, and it's unfortunate. It hit Virginia at the worst time. It's now hit Kansas at the worst time. You're talking about 2 teams that legitimately could be Elite 8 teams in this tournament, and they may not even play at this point. So that has to affect anything as we look at how this tournament could play out. I think there's more unknowns than ever before than any other year in the tournament.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And every program is making decisions, though, based off health and student safety and not even what it does for the program to be in the tournament. Now, I'm going to switch to football here, but this, to me, was the biggest sign. Virginia Tech football, they beat Virginia, their rivals. They get the Commonwealth Cup back. And now Virginia's had this marketing strategy. They had a bowl streak of 25 straight years, and you could not talk about Virginia Tech for 5 seconds in any fall without going, oh, is this the year the streak comes to an end? They got to keep it alive as best they can. Here they are eligible for the streak, and they go, you know what? Our players have been through enough trying to go through these bubbles and these practices. And they go, you know what? It's not worth keeping a 25-year bowl streak. Our big marketing point that we hit for all of our recruits and everything, they said, this is the year, and it's not because we're not eligible for it. That will to give you just an idea, not only of football, but basketball is the same thing. I know for Liberty, these kids have been quarantined when they're on campus, living in their own bubble since April of last year. They've had little tiny breaks to maybe go visit family. Then they've got to quarantine again for 2 weeks before they can even, in their room, before they can even go out and practice again. So this is not just about, okay, it's basketball season, we're practicing. This is months and months and months. And at some point, some of these teams are going to break and say, you know what? I get, maybe not the Liberties, the programs of that stature, but, these bigger schools, if they go, we might be, a Sweet 16, we might be, second round. If they go, you know what? At what point does this not become worth it? I mean, literally, we've gone through 9-10 months. How much longer are we going to continue to do this to risk people's health? No matter what you think of the virus, what it does, blah, blah, blah. At what point, the players have been through this and the coaches have been through this. How much longer before we say, let's just pack it in, see if this passes next year, and reassess from there?
And we've seen a few programs that had a pack in. I know University of Maine did that. Iona almost did. And here's Iona that later today could get into the tournament, the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference title. Rick Pitino and that program, I'm surprised they actually got back on the court. I really thought for sure, no chance. They missed so many damn games. And yet here they are with a chance to make the tournament still.
And, you talk about other teams. Virginia Tech has had 2 COVID shutdowns. Well, first of all, Virginia women's basketball canceled their year midway through. They kept having COVID problems. They said, you know what? They packed it in January. He said, forget it. It's not worth it. Virginia Tech had 2 COVID shutdowns. One of them, entering the ACC tournament. And even though they were the 3 seed, every time they had a COVID shutdown this year, they played not very well when they came out of it. And you saw that against UNC, their best player, Kive Aluma, was in single digits and just looked like he was having an off night. It was the same thing when they came out of their first COVID shutdown, an upset loss there. And so you wonder, okay, you get to the NCAA tournament, but if you're trying to shake off the rust, that's not the place to do it. You've already got to be 100%. You can't be less than that coming in.
And speaking of 100% coming in, Gonzaga, undefeated coming into this thing.
Yeah.
Are they ever going to be the mid-major to finally win this thing? It's like they've come close. They've been the team for the last several years that's been like, we're there. Does playing the West Coast Conference become an advantage or disadvantage? We could argue that till we're blue in the face because it's not a major conference. But yet, this team with the best offense in college basketball, averaging 92 points a game. This is a team that can shoot the 3 ball at about 44%. They've got a dominant player in Corey Kispert. So they got all the ingredients to say, we got the player, we can shoot the deep ball, we can run and gun. That should be a ticket to the Final Four. But Gonzaga have been here before with we've got all the tools to make it, and we don't get there. And then you start to question, is playing in the West Coast Conference, not a power conference, hurting them by the time they get to the tournament?
It might be a slight detriment. There's something to be said. Everybody, a lot of the people who are not fans of the ACC go, oh, no, they're ACC teams making it in. But, you got to understand these programs are all, pretty elite caliber. Most of them are. And so when you've gone through a year where you're beating the heck out of each other, when you can see Virginia and Duke and Virginia Tech and, NC State, or Florida State, just battle. Even look at Miami as a 13 seed fighting their way into the quarter semifinals. They had what a run they had. When you get done beating each other up, you are battle tested and ready to go. And at the same time, Gonzaga, now they are a fantastic team. They are deserving of every accolade they're getting. But you're right. There's something to be said for, okay, here comes the tournament. And now you're facing another level of competition that unless you're talking about non-conference play, they really haven't hit too much so far throughout the year. They take care of business throughout the regular season. That's what you're supposed to do. But there's a reason why a lot of these undefeated teams who have come through the tournament, I think out of the 19 previous, I think only 7 have won the national championship, because, those 7 have been more battle tested when they come into the tournament. They faced a lot more of those ranked teams. Now, Gonzaga, though, I will say I saw them against Virginia earlier on in the year. And yeah, there's no doubt the Gonzaga is the number 1 team of the nation. So I don't want to hang too much on that West Coast lesser competition. This is a team that I think, barring a major upset or a letdown of some sort, is definitely Final Four bound. They have that potential to really run the table this year.
There's a few teams that really stand out to me. Not only Gonzaga. You mentioned Oklahoma State earlier. They won 8 of their last 9. They may have the consensus player of the year in Cade Cunningham. A lot of people say could be a top 5 pick, potentially number 1 pick in the NBA draft. And when we get to tournament time, when you have the elite player, that usually gives you an advantage. Does Oklahoma State sort of become that? Well, they're not quite a 1 seed or a 2 seed, but this is a team that could make that run and maybe be the team that you want to pick in your brackets to say, if you're looking for that 3 or 4 seed to make a run, maybe OK State's a good pick.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. OK State is a great pick that not enough people are talking about in my eyes. Another one I was really impressed by, even though they came up short in the Big 12 tournament. Texas Tech has done some nice things this year. I would love to see them get in. I've been a huge fan of Mac McClung, even because he played his high school ball here in Virginia. Okay. If you ever want to watch a good dunk reel, just watch his state final game. He played for a small high school here in Virginia called Gate City. That's like in the middle of the mountains, small school. Wow. But he made the state final and he turned it into literally his own dunk contest. And I'm on the sideline for that. Rob, I'm telling you, after the show, YouTube, Mac McClung, I think it's on the Overtime channel. I'll give them a plug. But seriously, I mean, he's literally taking the ball, doing windmill jams, alley-oops, and he's just, I think he put up 47 in the finals in a state final game. I mean, wow. And he did it at Georgetown. Then he said Georgetown wasn't big enough with Patrick Ewing, by the way, as their head coach. And now he goes to Texas Tech, and he's been hitting clutch shot after clutch shot, and he's elevated that team. Again, in year 1 there, it wasn't enough to get them to the Big 12 title game, but that's another sleeper team. And Texas Tech is only 2 years removed from a national championship final game appearance themselves. So there's still plenty of talent there for the Red Raiders.
You mentioned Georgetown. I got to mention them real quick because they're playing for the Big East title. 12-12. But if you go back to the beginning of the season, they lost to Navy. I'm sorry. I thought for sure Ewing's in trouble. This program's in trouble. Now suddenly they win 7 of 9. They're going to play Creighton. Even if they don't make the tournament, has Ewing finally figured out the formula maybe that kind of says, I think Georgetown is finally going to get over the hump maybe next season?
Maybe he has. This is the one year I think you don't have to put as much stock into records and who you beat because, everything has been thrown off and discombobulated, So when I see a 12-12 team in the conference final, I go, yeah, okay. It could happen this year, In a normal year, if I saw that, I might go, okay, they're getting a nice little lucky run. Good for them. But no, this kind of year, I think a lot of people are rooting for Patrick Ewing. And like you said, they had that, that Navy game and you go, okay, they're not there. But
it was a total,
I remember seeing the highlights of that. Yeah, that was not one for the highlight reel. But
you can understand why they were suddenly mentioning Ewing, kind of going, should he be the coach? They were questioning it. They were literally, the experts are saying,
well, they should have. Yeah.
And now at this point, it's like, it's amazing what happens when all of a sudden, but I didn't see the streak coming. That's the funny part. There was no indication that said, oh, and all of a sudden, just like that, it just maybe because of COVID, maybe because this season's been just that kind of crazy. But I'm hopeful. I'm rooting for Ewing like everybody else because of all the dues he paid as an assistant coach in the NBA. I want to see him succeed at Georgetown.
Take the COVID out of it. There's something to be said about, okay, you're on the hot seat, and then, you've got to find a way to get your team to go, please, guys, I got to get something out of here.
Right.
And he was able to do that. So you got to give credit to Patrick for doing that. Now, whether that equates to long-term success, I don't know. But we'll wait and see. But it's certainly a nice first step.
Absolutely. looking a little bit more into the NCAA tournament, I'm going to throw a couple of teams at you that maybe we should be paying attention to, starting with Liberty. So you know a lot about them. 23-5 this year. Number 3 defense in the country. That's their calling card. They do shoot the ball well from 3-point range at about 39%. They're going to be a pain in the ass to whoever they play. For them, getting one win would be a big deal.
Yeah.
Are they capable? They're more than capable of doing. Do you see them doing it? Depending on, let's say they're seeded like 10th. They play a 7 seed. Do you see them potentially pulling the upset?
There is potential for it there. I'm trying to balance out I'm covering for them. That would be great to continue.
I appreciate that. Absolutely.
But if I have to compare maybe last year's team to this year's team had all the pieces. And the one thing they had that this year's team maybe is lacking a little bit is more of the height and the inside presence. Last year, you had a Scotty James and a Caleb Holmesley who not only could shoot the big ball, but could also bang it out inside a little bit more. Now, there's no fear in this team, and they proved they can bang it out a little inside, but Richard McKay's teams love to shoot the 3, and this team's a little bit more geared towards that. You know, when you got someone like Darius McGee who is about the same height as, maybe an inch or two taller than Spud Webb, but still has a vertical where he can, I don't know if you saw the ace on final, he can literally almost touch the top of the backboard. He's got that kind of vertical. It's insane to see. But he's proved that, despite his small stature, that he can ball with the best of them. So the potential is there. It's just, to my eyes, it's going to depend on the matchup. If they get matched up with a couple of 6'11" post players on another good team, it's going to be a little bit more difficult, and it's going to depend on, honestly, how good of a shooting night they do have. But the pieces are there for an upset, at least in the first round.
Let me bring up Loyola, who've been ranked on the top 25. I'm kind of confused by them in the sense, not that they're 24-4. They're legit as far as the record goes. But the fact that they're ranked in the top 25, you look at the schedule and you kind of go, what here makes them a top 25 team? I know they had the great run a couple of years ago that got them to the NCAA Final Four. Great defensive team, best in the country, holding teams about 55 points a game. You've got a center in Cameron Krutwig, who's like a one-man band. I mean, leads the team in scoring, rebounding, assists, and field goal percentage. So I'm confused by Loyola. Is this team real right now? I mean, you can go back and say, well, they had the Cinderella run. They know as a university they can do it. But is this team legit based on their schedule, playing the Missouri Valley, the whole bit?
That's a great question. The one thing, that you mentioned is their defensive prowess, and on paper, at least the amount of scores they put on remind me of the way a Virginia team played, when they went on their championship run. They're holding teams to 50 points a game, 52 points a game down the stretch. That's all well and good as long as you've got the clutch players who can back it up, and at least get you over the hump. Virginia traditionally, just had enough, as long as everybody's playing well. And that's the question. Does Loyola have enough offensive talent when they start getting into this upper echelon competition to go, okay, what happens? It's great when we're putting up letting up 50 points in the Missouri Valley Conference. What's going to happen when we get into the tournament? All of a sudden our defense is doing everything they can, but they're letting up 60. They're 65. Do we have the offensive talent to then go out and put up? And so far, jury's out on that in my eyes. I mean, they got a couple 70s recently. They beat Drake 75-65. So you go, okay, they could shoot a little bit. But again, those are the questions that you get answered as you go in. As far as a Cinderella run that late, you're going to have to prove a little bit more to me, in these early rounds to prove that, put these teams away early rather than letting them hang around.
I look on paper, I think Drake's a better team than Loyola. That's the thing that surprises me. I actually think Drake's better, and yet Loyola's ranked. So that's why I had to ask that question. I'm really confused by that team. I truly if I'm filling out a bracket, I'm going, I don't know. I don't know what I do.
Yeah. Overall, Drake is averaging much more in the way of points. Their only real opponent as far as a national brand goes, they played Kansas State early on in the year, and that was a 10-point loss. But still, overall, this is a Drake. Oh no, excuse me. Drake beat Kansas State. I apologize. I misread that. But yeah, you're putting up games averaging into the 70s, low 80s. That's right around where you want. The level of competition may not have been there overall, but still, when you can put up that level of points consistently throughout the season, that at least gives me a little bit more confidence that you're not going to lay an egg come tournament time. So yeah, I mean, but it's two totally different, approaches. Like with Virginia, everybody goes, "Oh, Tony Bennett games are so boring." No, they're not. They're just it's a different mindset. It's different.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like
If
playing
you ever
chess against him.
if you ever go to Charlottesville, they cheer for defense. They cheer for block shots and steals. And the first time you see it, they go, "Why are they cheering for this? There's no score." And but it's a totally different mindset. Once you get it, it's fun to watch. And that's the same thing. So, are you rooting for the offense or are you rooting for the defense in this case? And one of them is going to win out.
I'll give you one more team that if you're looking in your brackets, you're going to see them. Speaking of offense, Winthrop, 23-1, great record. Okay, you know what I'm talking about with this team. They're averaging 80 points a game, but this is a team that has nobody on their squad that averages more than 12 points a game. This has been a complete team effort. But can that team effort interpret against maybe a faster team, a bigger team? What do you think of Winthrop as far as where they're going to go in the tournament? Can they win a game?
I think there's potential for them to win a game, but it's the same situation we've talked about. Who have you played? What's your resume? And, Liberty used to play in the Big South. Winthrop used to be the constant thorn in their side down there. And, so, they've hung their hat on basketball in the last 10, 15 years. But the one thing that they have not done that maybe some of the other teams in the Big South or those who have moved on have done is they've started to schedule these non-conference opponents. Test yourself, build this thing up a little bit over time. Right. I'm not saying they've taken the safe route, not at all, but at the same time, if you're looking down their schedule, who are you going to say you played? UNCG out of the SoCon? Okay. Longwood, no, that's conference opponent. Furman, there's not a lot of real upper echelon things to hang your hat on. So that's one of those cases where you mentioned it's a team effort. That's great. But what happens if even one of those pegs comes out in the tournament? There's no leader on that team to say, I'm the man who's going to get us over the hump. And that's where that battle tested nature in my eyes, that becomes so important because okay, this guy can get it done against that caliber of team, and so is there a potential for an upset there? Sure. They did big things. They routed Campbell in the finals of the Big South, but it's going to be an uphill battle.
Pick one team right now. I know you're partial to Virginia, but if you had to pick one team where you sit there and say, okay, I'm gonna go online, I'm gonna bet one team in this tournament, who are you putting the money on?
Oh, jeez. Way to put me on the spot there.
Hey, look, I can understand if you'd win for Virginia, nobody would argue that point because of their style. Like you said, Tony Bennett's defense is going to frustrate anybody. So they're the type of team that's an Elite Eight team. We talked about it last year. They probably were going to be a team that could make that run. I think they're better than last year on some levels. The question is, do they have enough to make the Final Four and maybe make another run?
Enough to make the Final Four, possibly. Right. The one thing I love is Sam Hauser is transferred in from Marquette, and he's been that offensive powerhouse that, to be honest, last year they did not have. Kihei Clark is great, but at the same time, he's that player that you want him running the point. You don't want him shooting it 15 times a night. You want him running your offense.
Sure.
Jay Huff, again, someone you want inside as your big, powerful threat, but you don't want to put on him, hey, Jay, I need 22 from you every night, in addition to your blocks, in your defense, and now you've got a consistent threat in Hauser, who's been lighting it up from three and has been a huge cog to this thing. If you're asking me to put my money though on a team to really make a solid run at this thing, it's going to sound like I'm hopping on the bandwagon, but this might be the year for Gonzaga. I really, really believe that. Again, there's something to be said about just looking so dominant. That Virginia game impressed me so much. That was never a game. It just was never a game. It might be Gonzaga in my eyes. I wouldn't count Virginia out. I don't necessarily feel the magic around Virginia that I did 2 years ago. Right. 2 years ago. Has it been that long already?
No, it's been the longest 3 years of our lives. It's only been a year. But,
And they're still the defending champions.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. They're still the defending champions. Wow.
Defending champ. Yeah, meanwhile, everybody else in their second season in the NBA. But, I feel like they've got a lot of great pieces and are going to make a deep run in Virginia. I don't feel that team 2 years ago was just special, and you could feel it, forget the storyline of redemption after the upset, but no, I think Gonzaga's got to be the one to beat. No one has really put it to them yet this year. They have just been that in a year of uncertainty. They've been the one certain thing.
And my heart wants to go for Gonzaga. I would have thought about Villanova, but with the Connor Gillespie injury, I just don't see them going anywhere right now. I really don't.
If we're talking before that injury, my answer is different. 100% with you on that. Yeah.
Okay. But my pick, only because my heart is saying Gonzaga, my brain is going Baylor. Only because this team shoots the three ball like nobody. They can score, third in the country. You got three guards that can consistently put 15 points, or actually the three of them are averaging about 16, 17 points a game. So you've got the only thing that I think hurts Baylor is their lack of size. Nobody in that lineup is over 6'9". So they're not the physical team. They're the fast team. They can go up and down the court. They can shoot the 3-point ball. If they get into a slow down physical game, like I would love to see a Baylor Virginia game because that is a total contrast of styles. It'd be interesting to see who walked away from that one.
It would be. Now, let me flip it back around you because I only saw clips. Baylor just lost to Oklahoma State yesterday. Yeah. Does that raise any questions in your eyes about their ability?
It does because, again, that's where I think my sleeper pick now becomes Oklahoma State because I was so impressed with the way they played and because you've got, as I like to look at a team and say, when you have the one dominant player, sometimes you can put one player you can put the team on the back and you can go, Cade Cunningham looks like that kind of player.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Yeah. I'm really with you on that.
I mean, if I had to bet the conference, all due respect to the ACC country, I know you're watching down there. I'm going Big 12. Sorry, don't shoot me. But this year, I'm thinking it's a Big 12 year. It's just
that's what makes March Madness fun. We all put our theories into a big hat, shake them up, and see how it plays out in the court. So the Big 12 has proved they can compete on the big stage. I mean, that Virginia Texas Tech game 2 years ago in the finals was one for the ages. So I can't wait.
We're getting ready to wrap up here on the A game with Dave Walls. I do random shots to wrap up. By the way, look at this. Here we go. The random shot today from Death Wish. It is coffee vodka. I don't believe I'm doing this early in the morning. So for you, cheers. Bottoms up.
Cheers, my friend.
Thank you very much. All right, 3 questions in random shots. I know Dave way too well because we worked together for 5 years in Delaware, but I think you'll appreciate all 3 questions for what they are.
Okay, bring it.
Better basketball movie, Hoosiers or Blue Chips?
Oh boy, that's a good question. This could be a whole separate podcast, man.
It really could. We can spout out about the advantages of both of them and the disadvantages of both of them.
Wow. For me, and maybe this is just a generational thing, I will lean towards Blue Chips. I mean, Hoosiers is the sentimental favorite, but Blue Chips, and I think Nick Nolte's performance in that is one of the most underrated gems, especially that resignation speech at the end where it's like, I've become everything I despised. When he start doing that, that's like one of the all-time classic also I quit speeches. I think in the back of our head, I think when we go, boy, I'm just going to quit my job. That's the speech I'd want to give. Just I hate this place. It's everything I despise.
I put that in my top 3 on Nolte performances too. I mean, and Nick's 100%. A great actor, and it's like that performance, like you said, very underrated. Well said.
Yeah.
One. I'm going to post can you put up photo number 1 because this man knows something about this.
Oh,
Your favorite game on The Price is Right.
Oh, really? Boy, this would be a series. My God. Oh, geez. All right. So everybody says Plinko. I mean, everybody just goes, hey, Plinko. Right. Love Plinko. Who doesn't love Plinko? God. All right. I'll give you my top 3 quickly. I think you got to put cliffhangers up there because it combines the pricing and who doesn't love yodeling in the middle of the game?
Yeah. Yes, I remember it.
Who doesn't? I wish I could turn my camera around. I've got the cutout, the yodely guy cutout. Because I worked for the Price is Right live
that's why I had to bring it up. Absolutely.
Yep. And so one of my little going away presents was they gave me a yodely guy. So I've got him sitting on top of my computer monitor. Unfortunately, he's affixed in a way that doesn't allow me to rip it off without probably knocking the camera over. But so cliffhangers is probably my one. I love just the old school pricing games, the ones that really, because some of them are more like, hey, you're on stage and let's 1, 2, 3, you win a car. I don't like those. So you got to price something. So for me, it's cliffhanger. The old school Golden Road is always special because that's when they're usually playing for like a $70,000, $80,000 car or a motorhome, but it's all based on pricing knowledge. And it's in the bag when they're doing the grocery bags and you got to arrange the items because it takes a lot of guts to go through all 5, with one product not being there. This is a conversation 3 people are enjoying, but I don't care. It's in the bag. It's fantastic. And it on The Price is Right Live, by the way, it's the one prop that I almost lost a finger to.
Oh my God.
So for one show, and unfortunately I don't have a tape of it, I actually filled in as the host because the original host was out and so our version, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but the props on The Price is Right are literally just made out of wood. They're like plywood.
I actually didn't realize that. Wow.
Oh yeah. Oh, they're literally almost all made out of wood, and they're just painted really well. They hold up under HD cameras, and so you hit this button for the bags, you press it down, and the bag has like a hydraulic thing where it goes boo, and the bag lowers. So for one show, I said, "All right, here we go. Let's see if you win $1,200." I hit the button, and the hydraulic part didn't work. So instead of the bag going boo, it went thump. And it literally sliced my finger right around here, the deepest cut, and I had to have about 6 or 7 stitches after the show, but like I could see down to the bone, and I was just going, I had to do the rest of the show with like a tissue wrapped around my head, and oh boy, yeah, it was so. But still, even despite the life-threatening injuries, that is still one of my favorite games.
And that's the thing. I know The Price is Right Live has been traveling the country for years. Obviously, because of COVID, it has not been able to do that. If you get a chance, they've been going to casinos for years and other places, some theaters. Their hosts have ranged from Todd Newton of the Game Show Network to Doug Davidson from The Young and the Restless to even Instinct's Joey Fatone. Who did you work with? Who was your host at that point?
So I actually, like you mentioned, they kind of have a revolving door a little bit. So I actually started under Todd Newton. So I've got this great, he did the intro for me on the audio loop, which was great. I also worked with Roger Lodge, the host of Blind Date.
Oh yeah.
Doing it. Yeah. And he was great. A guy by the name of JD Roberto, who's hosted a lot of reality shows and game shows as well. And also David Ruprecht, the host of Supermarket Sweep from the 90s and 2000s. I remember
David Ruprecht.
And David Ruprecht, and we still keep in touch to this day. David Ruprecht, he's got stories, man, from like 70s and 80s Hollywood that are just,
you know what? I would love to interview him because I know if you there's a channel called Buzzer, which is now across the country. They've been rerunning Supermarket Sweep literally twice a day, 7 days a week, and it actually sparked interest in ABC doing a reboot now of Supermarket Sweep. So I think David Brubeck has got to be sitting there kind of going, it's kind of cool that he's being recognized a little bit more nowadays than ever before.
Yeah, he loves it. And, even when I was working with him, fans would come up and go, "Oh my God, bring back Supermarket Sweep. I love you." And he could tell stories about shoppers slipping with carts and hitting him in the crotch in the middle of a race, there's great video of it. One of the first season episodes, a woman crosses the finish line with the cart twice and nails him to both times of the cart, and they just keep rolling tape. He's going, "Okay, thanks everybody," and he loves telling that story. But yeah, I mean that honestly is what helped me get into television. Learning that stage presence.
Yeah.
Because coming from radio, and you were more developed than this I was at that point. I was just strictly coming from the news background, but I learned that stage presence, that, era of, okay, you're performing at this point in time, something that I think you do so well in the radio and the podcasting, but I was not there yet. And, and it wasn't until Roger Lodge pulled me aside and had to, go, "Look, man, you are the announcer to this audience. This is what they expect of you." And it really helped me develop, my confidence in my performance, where now I feel comfortable in front of a microphone in front of just about anybody. So I can't thank all those people enough for what they did for me.
And that was where I'm going to wrap up. You set me up perfectly. You didn't even know it was the third. The third random shot. For people who don't know, A-Game was a nickname that I picked up at WSCW, WDEL when I was working in Wilmington, Delaware. Dave was doing traffic. Dave, a lot of times on my afternoon show, would be doing some cut-ins along with the great Robin Bryson, who basically, when you go down into the Delaware Valley, the station I worked at was basically the same people for the most part for many years. So when I got through there and actually made an impact, it was actually a big deal. And David was the same thing, 5 good years with the station. And Dave would literally be like he'd be checking in from the roads and doing the trap. This is where I go for the last random shot. Okay, so I'm going to set it up. 5:17, you're with the A-Game on 93.7 WSET. Let's go to the roads. Dave Walls, traffic. What the heck's going on out there?
Well, right now 95 southbound, got backups going down from down through the Stockyards down through Churchman's Marsh out of 141. Hey, watch out for a barbecue on 141 as you go down near J Drive. And 13 southbound coming down through. Boy, you pick it up like I never even left.
Exactly. It's like we're right back to where we were.
That was X number of years ago. We'll leave it at that. And yet I picked it up like, wow. I hadn't even thought about the names we used to have for certain stretches of I-95. Sure. But, you mentioned about the people there making an impact. I grew up in Delaware, so, Robin Bryson had been there forever. And it was very surreal to get a call on my phone. Hi, this is Robin Bryson. You go, hi, Robin Bryson. Again, radio, that medium where, you hear voices, but you don't see the people just yet. And so when you hear that voice on the phone and he's talking to you, that was something. So yeah, you talk about what a great place to work that was, learning from, people who, dedicated, decades to the community. And boy, yeah, love doing it. And, in a way, I hate to see, what's become of some of radio, and also some of television, with a lot of the layoffs that have happened, even here on the television side,
I was about to say, I'd like to send my regards to everybody that you work with. I know Sinclair Telecable could not have been an easy decision to make the cuts that they made. I mean, it was significant. Thousands of people are now out of work, just like many of us who would like to be doing radio cannot right now because the jobs are just not there. Our hope is that at some point, and this is something I hope people will understand, advertising dollar is so important, and it's hard for small businesses to give the advertising dollar. But when we start opening up a little bit more, please keep radio and television in your minds, because if you want to see your local television station, your local radio station prosper, we're going to need you to make that happen. There's no other way. Without 100%. The ad dollars, we can't get there.
Yeah, especially in television, everybody goes, "Oh, you make six figures. You're doing great." No, we don't. Unless you're in New York City or LA, you are not making that kind of money. No. It's just true. We do it because we love it, and without those advertising dollars, it's hard. And a lot of groups have unfortunately made some tough cuts. In our building, we've had 3 or 4 people who've been here over a quarter of a century, and they're out. And so whether it's radio or TV, it's tough. And honestly, just think of us, especially if you're an advertiser or a small business.
Yes,
when it gets better for you, spread it around so we can all work together, and that's the best we can do right now.
Ming, put up photo number 4 because I want to mention the website WSET.com. That is where Dave is based out of. It's ABC 13. His sports reports. He is the anchor. He is the do everything kind of guy nowadays, and look, there's a lot that he does, from high school football to football subdivision football to the NCAA tournament to the Division III tournament. Lynchburg minor league baseball is going to be kicking up again. I mean, it's like
one thing at a time, man. Come on.
Going, okay, you're going to need a vacation from this vacation. Yeah, this is not a vacation, but I mean, thank God you love what you do. I mean, it was a great move when you got it 5 years ago. Proud of you for that. Congratulations.
Thank you, man.
Continue to enjoy what you're doing. Absolutely.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. And always a pleasure to hop on with you. And love seeing the show grow, man. I've been enjoying the episodes. I've been checking in. I know I haven't been texting you as often, but I have been checking in, seeing the shows, man. And it's funny to see how the show has grown over the last year as well. Yeah. You were still getting your feet wet a little bit, and now look at you. You got intros and lower thirds in here and everything.
Yeah, I've got a background now. Good. I'm like, I'm in the studio. It's great.
You're a little bit, by next year, you're going to have a green screen in back here and you're going to be like floating.
Don't give me any ideas, man. I'd have to afford that, but that's another story. But I will say this, coming up in April, since Dave is kind of nice enough to kind of segue this because we're talking about some of the guests, former American Idol star, Tony Award winner from Rock of Ages, Constantine Maroulis, will be on the show. Looking forward to that. We're going to be talking about the Rock of Ages Live that's going to be happening through Ticketmaster. We'll give you all the details, but don't miss out on that episode. Dave,
that'll be a good one soon. Sounds good, Rob. Take care, man. Have a good one.
You got it. And until next time, I'll be back on Thursday night. Look for the details on Facebook or on Instagram. I'm Rob Acampora. Have a great weekend and